much talked about November 16 governorship and Kogi West rerun senatorial election is here, and everyone is excited.
In Tombia Iketiama, and electorate are still on the queue waiting to cast their ballot.
Hello. Please don't go to bed just yet, because we have to give you updates. And you don't want to wake up tomorrow to be told stories. So it's better you stay on with the largest network of television in Africa to hear, bit by bit, updates of the events that are going on in Bayelsa and Kogi State, as we continue our coverage of the elections, the governorship elections and senatorial elections in Bayelsa and Kogi State. Senatorial only for Kogi State, and then some piecemeal elections in some polling units in Bayelsa State. Welcome to this session, and it's a session that promises to give you an update both on the ground and from experts who have continued to monitor the event of these two state elections. I remain yours, Femi Okeowo, with the pleasure of welcoming you to this session. From my end, let me tell you that the two elections in Bayelsa and Kogi State have already been held, but I will not say the elections have come and gone, because the process, the next very critical process of collation, is just about starting now. For now, collation of ballot is underway at the ward and local government levels. The election was categorized by violence in some polling centers, and it affected quite a number of the proceedings, with snatching of ballot box and also recording of some other skirmishes around the various venues. According to INEC National Commissioner in charge of Information and Voter Education, Mr. Festus Okoye, reports at INEC's disposal indicate that most voters who were willing to cast their votes had the opportunity to do so. Some of them, however. He said, despite efforts by the Commission and promises of the political parties to promote peaceful elections and the signing of peace accord, there were reports of there were reports indicating that the process was in several places affected by thuggery and violence. As the Commission moves into the critical phase of result collation, INEC is calling on the general public, particularly in those two states, Bayelsa and Kogi, to be calm and assured voters in those states of the Commission's resolve to ensure that the elections are concluded fairly and credibly. As usual, we shall be joining the studios in Yenagua and Lokoja for updates of the collation. But here in the studio, I have a panel of personalities who, like I hinted earlier, while being here in Abuja, have been monitoring every move of the events that have been going on in those two states. I start from the person closest to me, the INEC's Deputy Director of Voter Education, Mr. Victor Aluko. You're welcome to this session.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
And next to him is Kabir Adamu, a security risk management expert. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we had him in the last session before we went on the series of news breaks. He is Honorable Ahmed Sajo, a former commissioner for information and strategy at Adamawa State. Honorable, you are welcome to this session.
Thank you very much.
I promised our viewers that we were going to give them updates. Let me start from you, Mr. Adoko. What update do you have for our viewers at this point?
Well, at this point, polling has closed in all the units where we deployed today. Collation has started in the ward, at what level? We call them registration areas. And our staff are all on ground at these levels to collect the results coming from the polling units. In some places, it's even possible now that collation has started at local government level in some places. So collation has started, and we are on top of the whole thing. We are asking people to be patient because we are aware that in some places, in some polling units, there were disruption of voting. But we are going ahead to ensure that we collate, and we are grateful to the police so far for the cooperation we receive from the police to secure our men and our materials. As at now, at this time, we are collating.
Okay, we'll still have you more updates, and no matter the kind of updates we have here, you cannot compare them with the updates right there on the ground. We already have our colleague in Lokoja standing by to give us a blow-by-blow account of some of the things that took place. But before we join our Fisayo in Lokoja, we would continue here. Kabir, you are someone who have your mind very fixed and passionate about security matters. And this election brings up security issues so very glaringly. What are the updates you have for now?
I think so far so good. The assessment in both states that the election is going to be violent, as it were, has turned out in a way not to be what a lot of foretellers actually foretold would happen. Yes, there were pockets of this violence and disruptions here and there, but I think on the whole, the security agencies managed the elections. Remember that pre-election, during election, and the third phase is post-election. And with the history of electoral violence in Nigeria, post-election violence has usually been higher than the pre and the during election. So I'm very happy with the language and the body responses I've seen from both INEC and the security agencies with regards to their responsibilities post-election. Having said that, I'm a bit concerned with the influence of social media, as it were, in the elections, especially post-election. Already, if you go into social media, results are being posted. Some of the authors of this result are quote-unquote authorities. Now, I say that with, of course, in parentheses. The only authority that is allowed to announce the result is INEC. So what influence with this type of postings? Not everybody out there knows that it's only INEC that has that responsibility. So I think we've reached a stage in our development where we need to contend with the threat that social media poses with vis-a-vis national issues, including election, as it were.
Okay, well, I would really have loved to have Honorable Ahmed make his comment now, but Fisayo is ready there in Lokoja. So let's have him. Let me warn you, Honorable Ahmed, it's like you are the politician here. So we're going to ask you, when we return, how much of violence do politicians put in their strategy? You are Commissioner for Information and Strategy. So when we come back, we will talk to that. Well, for now, let's join Fisayo there in Lokoja.
Thank you, Femi. I could just barely get my cap on because we're just coming in from the field. It's been quite a hectic day, but the people of Kogi have gone out and casted ballots indicating, of course, the destination of the state for the next 4 years. We'll be getting information on how that will unfold. But someone is right here with me who has gone around the state or sent people around the state, and she's been here in Lokoja looking at how the process has gone alongside other observers. I'm talking about Ideyat Hassan. She's the Director, Center for Democracy and Development, CDD. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
You still look very fresh in spite of all the movements and the sun.
I don't look fresh. I'm very tired. It's been a day. We started as early as past 6, moving around the state to see what is actually happening. It's commendable because in the early hours of the day, the turnout was quite large, quite impressive, as the people were very ready to cast their votes to choose their leader for the next 4 years.
So let's take it one step after the other. There was accreditation, of course, and then we had all the processes. Looking at it, what are your comments in terms of logistics and how the umpire was able to deploy its staff and eventually, of course, midwife the process?
I think on the average it went on fine. They were able to deploy at least in several parts of the state, but some issues still impacted the logistics this time around. Largely the flood and where they are lower land, they had to travel. Even some they had to go all the way to local Suleja to reconnect. I think what is very, very key from this election when it came to logistics, it was not just the disappearance of some of the drivers or all the other perennial issues which has previously accompanied election logistics, but the issue of infrastructures. The fact that we have broken down infrastructure is really impacting elections in this country. And it tells us that in the next 4 years, before the 2023 elections, we have to do a lot in terms of road network. We have, in fact, it's very, very important. Waterways, electricity, all those are issues that the electoral umpire cannot actually provide. It is the responsibility of the states.
All right, let's look at, before all the, logistics, apart from that, we saw INEC engage with stakeholders, for instance, talking about the modus operandi of the day. But some issues still reared their ugly heads. What exactly do you think could be a challenge in terms of, voter education, in terms of perhaps even some acts of desperation by some of the stakeholders?
I think two critical issues emerge that has even brought down INEC on the scale of things. It's like, yes, there are election management bodies, but it has actually revealed that election is a stakeholders affair. One is the issue of vote buying, or we call it vote trading, because it was not just the political parties who were buying votes, the people were also ready to sell their votes to these parties. That itself is a challenge. But nothing has actually marked this election more than the violence in several parts of the state. This violence has raised a lot of credibility issues, because we had instances of intimidation of voters, intimidation of observers, intimidation of journalists, gunshots everywhere. Several hours behind, nobody would have been able to go out, let alone come to NTA to participate in this election. And it raises the issue of this zero-sum nature of politics itself. if the essence of politics or this election is I want to be in office is to represent the people, why do we resort to bringing it? I think what we have really experienced in Kogi today has dampened the morale of people. It has even started raising the question that why do we even have to keep monitoring or observing these elections if nothing changes, rather things actually get worse? Then what is the integrity of the whole process and the legitimacy of such outcome and whatsoever emerges? These are critical questions we really have to answer. And I think that these are touchy questions for most people, both citizens or observer alike. That after 20 years of democracy, when we should be talking of a maturing, we can no longer say our democracy is nascent. But instead of us celebrating gains in the electoral process, we are saying that politics is becoming gradually more and more zero-sum, and what I call gunpoint democracy, where people are no longer relying on the will of the people, but they are relying on the power of the gun to actually get into office.
Okay, let's digress a bit and look at the people, the Kogi people themselves. In spite of all, the prognosis and perhaps some of the early warnings, we saw a huge chunk of, eligible voters come out.
Yes.
Early, willing and ready. At least, perhaps that is one good point.
It's a positive of these elections, actually. I think while we look at all the challenges, there are positives in the elections as well. The voter turnout was quite huge and very early. I'll say that by 8 o'clock, the numbers on the queue, I was at Ganaja 21, one of the largest area, 21 polling voting points in one primary school, and the numbers of people, including the elderly, was quite huge. I was another polling unit in Anigba, and you be in Ajaokuta rider. You see people, both men, queued separately, women, and everybody was ready to vote. Even in spite of the gunfire in several places, people still were not intimidated. They were ready. So that zeal of the Kogites to be involved in this election, irrespective of the challenges, must actually be commended. And we saw several instances where they were even following their votes to ensure that their vote eventually counts. So there are good things still that we can count on.
Okay, now let's let's look at a key aspect of this election, and that's perhaps the security architecture and how they have been able to assist INEC in carrying out this exercise. What will be your comment?
I think at the beginning of the elections, the policemen were very visible. For each of the station, there were at least a policeman. In another one, there were four like that, and they were all unarmed. But the main challenge is we expected to see several of them outside the areas. Yes, within the polling precincts, they are not meant to be there carrying arms, but outside to secure. We had instances that they were overpowered, they scampered. We had instances where they could do nothing to actually contain some of these violent acts. Then what is the essence? Was it because of the sheer number? I think it's the sheer number. The fact that I will not also rule out a possible complicity, although there are many.
Perhaps we will not be able to establish that.
We cannot establish, allegedly. That's why I'm saying that we cannot rule it out, because they could actually be dressed in the uniform of police or other security agencies and not be one. But the fact that they were largely unharmed, the fact that they had to scamper for safety in several instances, the fact that they could not even contain vote buying, itself raises question in terms of the large deployment that is actually experienced. And all the issues being raised here is that election is a stakeholders affair. I think it's no longer okay to put the blame on one person and say, okay, it is the electoral management body, INEC, that has not done well. What about the voters who are selling their vote? What about the political class who are instrumentalizing violence as a way of winning office? In fact, the question, before I go to the security agency, what we are saying is this: how can we actually curb corruption? How can we fight corruption if all the processes that leads to the election of our representatives are flawed. There is no way we can actually get rid of corruption in this country.
Now let's look at the issue of logistics. I was out myself,
Yes.
And in terms of movement of men and materials, especially to riverine areas, hinterlands, were you satisfied?
I think that things could have actually been better. But again, and that's why I spoke about infrastructures. I think really there were instances where they were planning, there were instances they were actually loaded buses, but at the end of the day, the drivers were missing. So our report indicated that, so we were ready. In fact, as at yesterday, we had already projected that there might be some slight itches in logistics because having monitored the deployment from the CBN to INEC office to the racks, it was very, very obvious. So there were logistical challenges. But when you come to the riverine area, I also think that this topography, this very poor infrastructure, likely contributed to some of the logistical issues experienced in the election.
In terms of chronology, in terms of what we'll be expecting, especially now that the officers will be returning to base shortly, and then they'll be coming here. Let me inform the viewers, of course, that our studios are right here in front of the Coalition Center. We'll be expecting them to come from the different parts of the state, 21 local governments and the state borders, 9 other states. So perhaps that could be a logistical nightmare in itself in terms of the spread of states. We'll be expecting the officers to be returning one after the other. But in terms of the length of this exercise, are you expecting us to wrap up as in a short time, or you expect it to be a long day? Or a long night?
I think it will depend on the political actors themselves. If they want this election to wrap up as soon as possible and a winner emerges, then the violence will actually have to reduce, because we are at the point now that, of course, there are ongoing violence. We are monitoring the World Coalition at the CDA, and we know what is actually happening. From what now gradually they are moving to the local governments. If there are exceeding violence at that point, we will not be able to round up and declare the results by tomorrow morning or afternoon. So it depends on them. The fact is the onus is actually on the stakeholders.
Your analysis have been a bit dire, but I'm happy that you are here. Let's look at what we have seen in the past few days before now. Did we see enough to warn that we could have this kind of complexion?
Yes, I remember that our first report on Thursday actually spoke to this, and we were not speaking to these issues not just from what is evolving, because we've been in Kogi for the last 6 months working with partners to ensure that there is a free, fair and credible elections. It all pointed to it, and the history of elections in Kogi itself points to the same. If you look at the Kogi elections in 2015, it was no different. Even the 2019 elections, the problem is that if we know some of those selected local government, there has even been early warning. For instance, Tekina has been mentioned to be an area where we expect to see violence. It's an area that has been very previously violent. The problem is, what did we do to curtail the same that happened in 2015, in 2019 general elections, to not happen again? So it tells us that we do not instrumentalize early warning enough, we do not plan, and we are not using our history to actually resolve some of these issues.
All right, let me quickly just inform our viewers that the resident electoral commissioner supervising this whole assignment, talking about Professor James Apam, is already just over our shoulder at the Coalition Center here. Will be telling us exactly the state of play as far as this election is concerned. We'll be joining him shortly. Well, he's still getting sorted out. We would go into the Coalition Center right about now.
And so,
okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are gradually coming to the end of what we started a few months ago. Elections were held in the entire state
talking is too
today
much there. We need to listen to
for the
what
governorship and for the Kogi West Senatorial District. Collation is going on in all parts of the state, and so we can't take results this evening. We'll have to start. Of course, we've received results.
Are we still doing our stuff?
But let me say the collation for Ogoribo has been completed,
going there?
but that is just one local government. And so we plan to start the collation at the state level in earnest tomorrow at 9 a.m. And so we encourage everyone, the members of the press, the political party agents, members of the civil society, to turn up tomorrow morning for us to start the collation at 9 a.m. Thank you.
All right, that's the Resident Electoral Commissioner. I'll be giving you updates on events as they unfold there. We'll even try to get into the hall as well, and perhaps even get into. So let's come back to. Before we go, let's take your final analysis of today and your expectations.
I think that my today has been, in terms of the citizens, I actually commend the citizens, the Kogites, because not only were they frontal, ready to be involved in these elections, they've deployed themselves reasonably well. But it's quite unfortunate, the nature of politics. With each elections, the issue of politics, the nature of politics becomes questionable. The democracy itself, it's no longer sloganeering that we say that democracy is in danger. It's becoming endangered when people are trying to get into office at all costs, using the gun as a means. It's laying a very bad precedent, and actually it should be way forward for us. We should evolve. We should have elections where people can go on about their duties. We do not have to restrict movement. We can do anything. It should be like a celebration of joy, not of doom.
Thank you so very much. We've been talking to Hidayat Hassan, and she has been monitoring events here in Kogi. Let me quickly remove my earpiece so that I can show you a little thing. Yeah, we are right here, and let's just walk a bit and let's show you what is happening right here. Here is the Professor Mahmoud Yakubu Hall. It is where all these collations will happen. And in a few short hours, we'll be seeing materials and men coming in. You can see officials of the Independence National Electoral Commission looking at the hall. They've come to inspect, and here they are. You can see right now the hall is empty. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is where the announcements will be made. You can see the REC is inspecting what is happening, and this is where everybody will be. It's empty now, but of course it will be the center of action in a few short hours right here at the Coalition Center. We're right there outside. Of course, we'll be monitoring events as they happen. We'll be expecting, of course, the materials and men coming from the hinterland, from the riverine areas. And talking about the riverine area, Bayelsa, of course, is standing by, and of course, Abuja is standing by. We'll be giving you, events as they unfold and how the results are coming and the announcements. Because, of course, we are here to give you all that. So it's back to the studio.
Much, Fisayo. Thank you. Very thought-provoking discussion you had there with Hidayat Hassan. And back here in the studio in Abuja, before we go to Bayelsa, we have been joined by the special assistant to the DG of the National Orientation Agency. So we have a very rich panel here that should be interrogating the issues that have emanated, that have come from the elections in Kogi and Bayelsa. Now, Honorable Ahmed, you had the discussion from Lokoja, and before we went to Lokoja, we had started gravitating towards that area. All through the evening, possibly, I watched that session, and it was a lamentation session where we all are brooding about the level of violence in our elections, and these are just 2 states. We couldn't curtail it. You were talking seriously. You were Commissioner for Information and Strategy. As Commissioner for Information and Strategy and a politician, how much violence did you strategize when you were in government, in elections?
This is unfair.
No, I mean, these are politicians. Politicians are the ones doing this.
But let us be very serious about this.
I am serious.
The number one thing is that let us, very sincerely commend INEC for this time around. Not just because of the manner they handled the process, but because when the people were talking about the violence, INEC came up with a press release to own up to the fact that there were violence in the process. In the past, everything you hear is we have done our best, we are on top of the situation, that there was nothing wrong, that our enemies who don't like us are the ones. But INEC had accepted that certain things had gone wrong. But that, what they're telling us is that what has gone in any way vitiate the process itself and render it, not credible. So we must commend INEC for accepting, and we hope that it's a part of lesson learning at this point. I said it earlier in the afternoon that INEC had involved a lot of intellectuals in the electoral process, but we have not started seeing the full benefit of this intellectual exercise. There are no researches on why certain things happen and why certain things should happen the way they happen. One of them we discussed this afternoon was that why must INEC insist all the time that we must start our election by 8 o'clock? Since it looks like, based on what she's talking about, logistics issues and things like that, you cannot take materials before dawn, because it means you'll be moving those materials in darkness, and you are jeopardizing, their safety and security, and even the safety and security of the people that are going to take them. And then when you start in the daytime, most places you have difficulties getting to those places. And so why don't we begin to look at these issues very seriously and say whether we could just lift the time a little. Second, I think we must also commend the security agencies, because they have the most difficult tasks. If they come out in full force, the next story is that security was used to intimidate voters. If they behave in a civil manner and they stand guard the way they are supposed to do in a civilized climate, the people who come to cause this mayhem carry arms and intimidate them. She's saying that they have to
take cover. They have to take cover. They're human after all. They are security, yes, but they are human. So they have tried. They have also owned up to the fact that violence had taken place. We must also commend the electorate. In spite of everything, you heard her. She said there was a large voter turnout. It then means that whatever is being done to ginger people to come out and exercise their franchise is being. And we were told that in Kogi, for example, about 52%, there's a record of 52% early attendance, delivery of materials and attendance, and that is a marked improvement, and that is something commendable. But we must, like he said, condemn those who are using social media to create problems. I have seen, I'm not being told, I was monitoring, I have seen somebody post a violent activity that took place that had nothing to do with the elections, but claimed that it was part of the violence that is taking place in one of the places where elections are held. I have seen somebody
post full results before 2 o'clock, before even the time of the elections are closed for certain polling units. That again is wrong. So for as long as we, using the accessibility of internet-based capacity to communicate, also communicate confusion, we are adding. But let me tell you,
please,
politically,
we'll have a lot of time for that.
Okay.
Let me welcome David Akoji and have his initial comment, just 1 minute comment, because we have to go to Bayelsa. We have had Lokoja now. Let's go to Bayelsa. But please give us just your initial thoughts about the processes so far. 1 minute.
Okay, we have heard all kinds of reports coming out of both Bayelsa and Kogi. The extent to which those reports are true yet to be fully determined, but we have heard of very serious allegations, and it's worrisome. The activities of thugs in our elections is still unabating, in spite of, like he said, the tremendous efforts made by both INEC and the police. We need to find solutions to these challenges.
Thank you very much, David Akoji. That's the representative of the National Orientation Agency. Now in Yanagwa, Ameze is already set to receive us and give us an update and lead us into the night events so far. Ameze, are you ready? Are you here with us? Or we continue our discussion? They're not, okay. Amazing. Okay. Okay, then I just
the studio is on. Thank you very much, Femi, for joining us here. We are still at the INEC headquarters, and the electorate has spoken. Votes have been counted. Collation is ongoing, and very shortly we will be giving you an update of what the resident electoral commissioner has said. Monday Udo, he made an announcement a while ago, and we will start on that premise. But before then, I'd like to tell you that with me in the studio there are gentlemen here who will be reviewing the entire process of how the election went in Bayelsa State. My immediate left, I have a legal practitioner, Stanley Demabide. It's good to have you, sir. Thank you for joining us. And on my far left is Ezenwa Wagu, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how the election went in Bayelsa State, we want to quickly the media center where the REC just a while ago told us the next process to go.
So good. We believe that we have done a great job today by all of us. At this moment we thought we would be reaching the result of that election. But you all agree with me that the topography of Bayelsa State is not that easy. And because of that, we may not be able to start this night. I just wish to tell you that by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, this hall is going to be open for all of us, and we hope to have the results trickling in. And we'll take them as a come. On behalf of the management staff of INEC Bayelsa State, I wish you a pleasant night. Thank you.
Tomorrow morning, like the REC has said, Monday Udo, we will be giving you highlights of what actually went down as far as the electorate voices is concerned. I want to throw up this very important question. Let's just give an overview of what we saw today in Bayelsa. I want to start with Ezenwa.
Okay, I think thank you for. We've been talking about that almost all day. The watching the votes midday statement had come out, and we had listed 7 electoral processes that we engage with, which is first of all the opening of the polls. And I think events have now overtaken that. We have had the places where polls didn't open when they should, and that in places where it did open well, it came out. We've had voting and accreditation is over, and as we speak, Of course, we are now in the process of collation of results, and we also do now know that there will not be collation at the state level until about 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Yeah, but generally, I will say that in comparative terms, if you make a comparison between 2015 and today, what comes out clearly is that you are seeing elections concluded in Bayelsa State in one stretch, and I think it's not something to be taken for granted. If you understand, if you move around as we have done, even the people themselves are excited. They are happy. They are happy that they could achieve this. You know, when we were coming here, a lot of people thought that we needed lifeguards to be able to swim. They thought we would need vests, you know, bulletproof vests and helmets and all of that. But like I said in one or two occasions in Bayelsa, we prayed that the people of Bayelsa would disappoint the politicians and their supporters who will not want to be part of clean elections. We've seen relatively peaceful election. There were, like everyone has said, pockets of violence. Some of the things that continue to diminish us, the issue of ballot snatching in 2019 is ridiculous that there are people who could still be thinking in that way. It's ridiculous there are people who will still be thinking of burning. It's ridiculous that people will still be manhandling election observers and people who have come to bring credibility to and integrity to the process. But all of those things are in the mix. But as we go on, we can confidently say that we are going to sleep well tonight in Bayelsa, and everybody who has come to observe this election will not have a sense of anxiety that they came with.
Okay. Thank you so much. Stanley, what do you make of the process? The narrative is gradually changing. It is not Uhuru yet. What are those things that we must put in place to ensure that in no distant time the story will surely be a better one to tell in Bayelsa?
Thank you. But firstly, I was into observing and monitoring. I actually drove to a place called Angalabri, about 1 hour, 20 minutes from Yenagua, to cast my vote. And things went on very well there. It was more like a fanfare. You know, participation was huge, and people just wanted to do what they think they should do. You know, but with reference to the question that you asked and what Ezenwa said, regarding the issues of snatching of ballot boxes and thuggery, burning of places and all that, it's simple. People get away with these things, so they are bound to continue with them. As a matter of fact, it pays to do some of these things, in the sense that you do it, you get the result you're looking for, and there are no scruples. So unless and until we rise up to the occasion, discipline and punish, and make sure that such things will not yield results for those that are involved in it, I'm afraid that they might continue. These things will continue. So it is for us, particularly the security agencies, to rise up to the occasion of ensuring that persons are disciplined and as such deterred from continuing with things like that. And also to ensure that they don't reap the fruits, so to say, of their getting involved in things like this. To get the solution. If it no longer pays, there will be no need for anybody to get involved in it. You know, fortunately, however, this wasn't widespread. I voted in Sabama local government area, and it was smooth, like I said. And driving back from where I went to vote, I observed happenings around, and what I saw was, you know, perceived victors celebrating, and you know, really feeling excited that they were able to participate and ensure that their vote counts. I think that's beautiful.
The skirmishes we have experienced, obviously, are handiworks of a few mischief makers, and we are of a larger number, those patriotic Nigerians who want to see things get better, who want to ensure that our democracy is no longer described as nascent. What do you think we can do to ensure that these people who are constituting clogs in the wheel of progress are stopped in their tracks?
I think it's very clear, and my colleague just hit it straight. If there is reward for bad behavior, if there is nothing, there is no reason for behaving well. So we've continued to make the argument for the setting up of Electoral Offices Commission. And the reason for that is that, as you have seen now, these twin elections in Kogi and Bayelsa meant that you had to move security agents from nearby states or even far-flung areas to come work in this place. So even if arrests are made, there are not going to be follow-up. The people who made the arrests, latest by Tuesday, Wednesday, they are out of town, and there is no continuity in terms of getting. So we need specific, instruments that will face the issue of electoral impunity. Our constitution, our electoral act did not contemplate that you will still have people in this age and time behaving the way we have seen politicians behave in terms of getting power. And so you need to address that challenge frontally. The next important thing is to continue to encourage the electorates. And I want to use this opportunity to celebrate the electorates in Bayelsa State. I think their enthusiasm, I think their resilience, I think their willingness to come out has also shamed those who felt that there was not even going to be election. In fact, in many quarters, while we were doing some programs, they will tell you, the results have already been written, there is no need for people to come out. But the people have shown, we have seen people clutching their babies to come out to vote. I took photographs with very old women, in certain places, excitedly coming to vote. And what that means is that the people believe that this democracy will change their lives. The people believe that good governance will come from continued participation in this process. And I think that one of the ways to encourage them is to ensure that we do not just stop at elections, that we also have the way to ensure that this democracy works for the people. This staying under the rain, this scaling the floods to come and vote, this insisting that the floods cannot intimidate them, has to be rewarded by good governance.
As the floods did not intimidate Bayelsans. Yes. We have a report on that put together by Ebinimi Zitimi-Yola. We want to take the report of Ebinime, where she told us that Bayelsans turned out massively to exercise their franchise at the governorship election across the state. Said there were a few reported cases of skirmishes, but that did not actually deter them.
The Bayelsa State governorship election was relatively peaceful, except for some pockets of skirmishes and some areas where there were alleged reports of material hijack and shootings. Former President Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, Bayelsa State Governor Siriaka Dixon, and Minister for Petroleum Resources Chief Timipre Silva are among other eligible voters who participated in the election and cast their votes in the various units.
Whatever we do in selecting who will be our president, or selecting who will be our governors, selecting who will be our local government chairman, reflects on society. And if you bring people that are not competent, you cannot turn around to begin to blame government. Our nation must develop every citizen, not just about president, ministers, parliamentarians. No, everybody must do his work properly.
In Nembe, taking place in southern Niger, where materials meant for voters have been systematically taken away by hoodlums.
There are a few skirmishes here and there in Satama, places in Keremo, but there are not any other problem anywhere in Bayelsa.
The turnout of voters was much across the 1,804 polling units of the 8 local government areas of the state, including communities that are impacted by flood. Ebinimi Zitimiola, NTA News.
Still talking about the high enthusiasm displayed by Bayelsans, we want to bring another report, this time by Onengie Fineface. He says the resilience of Bayelsans to make history with the power of their vote was given a practical expression this election day. It took the form of courage against the force of nature. While on election duty, he met with a few of those people who displayed bravery. So we would like to take that report by Onengie Fineface.
The community now, you see, everywhere is flooded. People are packing from their various houses, and for now, everywhere is flooded. That's just the truth. How does it affect you? It affects me a lot. Your daily activities and all the rest. Maybe you just pack from your place to unknown destination. Maybe the comfort, especially, you don't have comfort.
Going by the testimony of Dakolo Amapere, I am very eager to see how Bahrain Ekpetiama will look like, seeing the flood level, which is very high. And from this distance, you can see the community just at the bank of the river. There are people on the bank. I'm sure that by the time we get in there, we'll see more of how this flood is affecting the community and how the members of the community are responding to the flood, bearing in mind the fact that this is election day and they need to come out to cast their ballot. We want to know whether the flood will hold them back or whether or not they are going to defy the challenges posed by this flood to participate in the election process. So, to Bahrain we go. We had a flooded entry to Ekpetiama, and the electorate are out to experience a flooded election process. The water level is very high, water coming out from the community down to the river, and these electorates are defying the unfavorable weather condition to participate in the process.
People have the anxiety to come and vote who they want them to be their leader. That is why no matter the flood, so many people have submitted, they were not even in town. But because of the election since yesterday, they are here. Some of them even slept outside to ensure that they cast their vote, perform their franchise.
Onengie Fineface, NTA News.
The same situation played out in Agudama, Ekpetiama in Yenegua local government area. Timinepre Ohia reports that despite the ravaging flood in these communities, the turnout of voters for the election was very, very high. Let's hear the rest from him.
The flood at Agudama Ekpetiama Unit 10 Ward 10, voters were not deterred as they are fired up, as you can see behind me. Here with me is an elderly woman waiting eagerly to cast a vote.
Now, waiting pain me when I come out from water, come vote here. We don't too suffer. We don't too suffer. So I will come and vote so that when the appointed man come and sit, we all will benefit.
It's been peaceful. As long as I can observe, it's been peaceful. No chaos, no reason for concern.
We had issues with the card reader, though the rec technician came and rectified it.
Smoothly. As you can see, the election is going on smoothly. For now, no violence. Every person is coming out in their numbers to come and vote, to decide for who to be our next governor.
We know the threat areas, and as the votes start counting, that can also generate some form of crisis. So the men are on ground, even throughout today. those expectations, and even the next day, Sunday.
The card reader is not functioning well. Some cards, the names are not showing, so some people are not voting just because of the card reader. So they are preparing to bring a new card reader. So we are waiting for it.
Masoma community play host to the Niger Delta University here in Southern Ijo local government area. Despite the flood that ravaged some parts of the community, the electorate say they are not deterred to cast their ballots to elect who will govern them in the next 4 years. From Southern Ijo local government area in Amasoma, Simenopri, or here, NTA News.
This report, gentlemen, have shown that Nigerians are eager, they're aspiring and yearning for a better Nigeria where the needed infrastructural development is given to them. We had one of the respondents in that report that, well, she has come out to ensure that she makes a choice of the right person who will bring about the needed change in that community. It shows the level of awareness and consciousness about election, and the power of governance is becoming very high, even among the not too literate members of our society. Before then, we got this report we talked about. We got the report from the media center, the announcement by the resident electoral commissioner Monday Udo. Does it mean that we are going to be for a very long day? Because he says result announcement will commence by 9 o'clock. What do you think is responsible for this shift?
Well, I think that the election administrators need to take a cue from the resilience of voters. We can't continue to hoist this regime of excuses about topography. We have seen that the people themselves scaled the flood. You understand? They showed that resilience. So Bayelsa didn't happen on us, and I keep saying this. The things that diminishes us. Idayat was talking from the Kogi studio, and she talked about how we don't learn from history. So when we have done with all of this that we have learned will peter into insignificance. We will not. It will not come to anything. We are not going to use it for anything. We should come to that point where we can have elections and announce the results. To say everybody go home 9 o'clock, you come back tomorrow, and the funny part of it is that we're going to still be here by 9. You may still not have these things concluded. We must get to that point where we fast track these issues so that we can put away, put conflict entrepreneurs to sleep and make sure that those who bandy, have truths, twisted results and all of that do not have a place to thrive on. But having said that, we can understand that some of these results are coming in from the PU to the ward level and to the registration areas down to the states. It will take a while, but what is important is that the people of Bayelsa and the people of Kogi State now have the responsibility to maintain this peace, to ensure that at the end of the day, this process comes to a conclusion that meets the expectation of all the people of Kogi and Bayelsa states that have paid this, that have made this sacrifice. This sacrifice needs to be rewarded, and one way to reward it is to make sure that all of this comes to logical conclusion.
Okay, you are asking for sustenance of the temple of the enthusiasm. Yeah. How can we achieve that? Stanley, how can we achieve this sustenance of the temple of enthusiasm?
Well, it is to ensure that, what the electorates go out to do is actually justifiably sustained at the level of announcement of results and all that. And referring to what Ezen said, I would just say that so long as we continue to harbor phobia for technology and still have to rely on the manual process of transmitting and handing over results, time will continue to suffer with regard to when results will be announced. So if we address that, see how we can, sort out this phobia for technology that we have with regards to coalition and related things in our elections, I think we will have gone a long way to address the some of the issues. And then let's ensure that what was displayed with regards to choices that were made should reflect in the results that will be announced. That way, people will be more emboldened, like the old lady, she impressed me so much, that yes, my vote will actually count and it can make a change. I think she expressed anger for the status quo and a strong desire for a change. I hope she gets it tomorrow.
I want to believe that will be your final words for us this evening, that Nigerians are yearning for the needed change.
Yes, and the umpires should ensure that when their wishes are expressed through the choice they make in voting, that should be respected and preserved.
Okay. Ezewan, your final thoughts.
Yeah, so the political parties also have a responsibility to rein in their supporters. The candidates must now begin to address their supporters to maintain the peace, to ensure that they learn from the hero of Bayelsa State, who has come to say, look, who after this kind of situation, conceded to the one who considered defeat magnanimously, and it has become a template and should be a template for other politicians to learn from. And I think it's important that they take that cue. So from tomorrow, the message must be that election has come and gone, and it's a contest between families, it's a contest between relations, it's a contest between people who have blood ties. So at the end of the day, we must come to that point where we say congratulations to the winner, and the winner also must be magnanimous in victory and take everybody together.
Thank you, gentlemen. Stanley Demabide, a legal practitioner, and of course Ezewan Wagu, chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. We do hope that the needed reforms will be put in place and done so very quickly, so that the enthusiasm of the electorate will not be doused. We are done here. Bayelsa Studios, the side studio is done. We will be rejoining Femi in our Abuja studios, and we will be bringing you updates of events as they unfold at the INEX Center here and in other places in town. Thank you very much, Femi.
Thank you to Ameze, and we truly have enjoyed the good news coming in from Bayelsa there. It's news that helps us to balance the story. We've had the Kogi side, and now we have had the Bayelsa side, so it helps us to have a good picture of what transpired during the day. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back for more discussions here in the Abuja studio.
Much talked about November 16 governorship and Kogi West rerun senatorial election is here, and everyone is excited.
In Tombia, and electors are still on the queue waiting to cast their ballot.
process, which is also a very critical process. But before we go into that, I think Lokoja has another update for us, and so we'll just join Fisayo again in Lokoja.
Thank you very much. I can see your face there. We are on the field, and we are here, and of course it's been quite a hectic day. It's been very sunny in the course of the day, but we thank God the weather has calmed down somewhat. Now I have someone in the house. Idris Miliki is an election observer. He was here yesterday, and told us, he was optimistic about the process. Now he's brought back a few reports to tell us a bit about what he saw on the field. Idris Miliki, well, first let me apologize for keeping you waiting a bit. I can see you're tired, but tell us a bit about what you saw on the field.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It has been a long day. And then it's a concluding aspect of the times table that emerged or commences on the May 16th. Election has been held. That is what more importantly, no matter the attributes, no matter what we have observed, election has been held in Kogi State. And we have seen, at least I traveled no less than 75 kilometers, and I cover average of about 4 local governments, or have to touch 1 or 2, and not less than 25 polling units. So, like I said, election has been held in Kogi, but we have observations. From the INEC aspect of it, not every polling unit commences election as stipulated by 8 o'clock. There are places that it is even up to 9 or after 9 before material actually arrives. That also delay. Then in terms of issue of turnout, there are places where turnout was impressive, there are places where it is low. So it is not something that is uniform. But the unfortunate thing is the fact that we observe the fact that politicians are desperate. And when you are desperate in a game like this, election is a game that a winner must emerge. Every other person is a participant in an election. So why people go into election with desperation? Do you really have to do all they have done to serve the people? Do you have to bribe people? Do you have to buy vote? For people you are going to serve. And that is why we are suspicious. And that is why we've been saying this, that why should politicians close to elections are giving money to electorate, are buying vehicles and giving all sorts of things that are not issue-based to say, okay, this is what I've done. And that has affected this kind of election, which people have to be killed, ballot boxes have to be started. At this level of our development in Nigeria, it is unfortunate, it is disappointing, and it is highly embarrassing.
All right, let's look at a little bit of a timetable. Let's look at, right here in Lokoja, the election officials rounded up most of their, activities at about 6 o'clock. Our Yakubu Onotu, rushed out and got 1 or 2 while they were rounding up to begin, to bring their processes, the programs home. Of course, he was able to catch up, I think, 1 or 2. Let's look at Yakubu Onotu's report earlier in the day.
Well, as you can, I am at Atar Open Field Ward C Unit 5 polling unit. The story you see here is the same across the whole of Lokoja local government. Polling officials have concluded elections and they are simply packing their stuff to leave the polling units. That's the same story you have here. And we'll go to talk to one of the officials. You tell us, what is your name, ma'am?
I'm Zuleihat Mahmoud. Zuleihat Mahmoud.
So, what is the situation?
Well, the situation was good. Voters came out in mass to cast their vote. It was a free and fair election.
So, any story from here?
No, there was no story. It was a success. Thank you, sir.
You've heard it from her. That is the presiding officer of the polling unit. The exercise has ended and they are simply leaving here now to go back to the local government office of the INEC. That's the story from here. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Yakubu Noto there, he did that much earlier. We would give you another report, still by Yakubu, and that was just a couple of minutes ago. Let's look at the process. You just spoke about the topography of the state and how big it is. What are we expecting now in terms of timelines, and which are the ballots that you expect to come in the latest, the earliest, based on your experience?
It is not something that is uniform. There are certain parameters that could delay or assist or hasten the result of an election. For instance, in Lokoja local government, Lokoja is hosting the state. But if you go to places like Abuja takes about 4 hours to get to Lokoja. So in that context, Abuja has always been an issue of delay because of it's a riverine community. And you cannot fly boat in the night to Lokoja, which will have taken maybe ordinarily 1.5 hours. So places like Abuja, despite it's in Lokoja local government, we are going to have delay. So is the terrain. What about places like Basa? That also have some challenges that is there. So these are the things we need to look into. So even before the election, we did what we call a flood risk mapping. So these are the things that can affect the performance of either the umpire or even the voters themselves. So, but as it is now, because of this 1 or 2 security challenges that we had, coalitions are not taking place. At what level? They are bringing everything into a center at local government level, and that can also delay. Because even the time you consume in bringing this item to the local government, INEC local government offices could also affect it. But I think by and large, despite there are skepticism, there are 1 or 2 issues that we have observed. I think generally, as at this moment, in Lokoja, where we are presently, and some of our contract, everything remains calm. Maybe by the time the result is trickling in, an announcement is made. And that's why we need to make a proactive measure on post-election reaction by whoever. So it is very key. As it is now, we are okay. It's a bit calm, but we are also having some level of concern about the outcome and when announcements are made. Is there any mapping that is taking place? Is there any privileged information that is taking place? How are the stakeholders, the media, the society, the umpire and the security? Is there any level playing field for everybody to be able to air their own opinion? So I think we need to put measure in place, a proactive measure to be able to receive the reaction that will take place after the announcement is made, either at ward level or either at local government level, until the final one is done.
Early in the morning, when I went, a lot of voters coming out to participate. In your own assessment, the areas you went to outside of Lokoja, what was the turnout like?
That's what I've said earlier, that the turnout is certainly fair in some places
compared to other elections.
Yeah, I think it's a bit better in this case. It's a bit better that there are places where you also find that INEC have certain challenges which must be addressed, and this kind of a level of the issue of delimitation. There are expansions. For instance, if you go to places like Obajana and look at the distance people have to travel to come and vote, there is restriction. These are all sorts of things that is affecting voters' turnout. When you have stayed for several years and there are no limitations, there are expansions, there are development, and people have to travel to 2-3 kilometers just to come and participate and to vote. They would prefer to stay at home when even the people who are voting for themselves are not delivering. There are no accountability, there are no transparency, there are no development. So you ask yourself, does he really want to trek 2 kilometers to go and vote for somebody at the end of the day will turn his or her back on you? So these are all the facts that is there. So people need to know, and I think INEC as a body must take it very seriously, that as soon as we conclude this election by next year, we must commence the process of delimitation.
All right, talking about life moving on, and of course, we've talked about tension and all that, but right here in Lokoja, it's as if life is moving on because people have come out. At least originally they came out in droves earlier to vote. Now they are coming back again this time to pick a snack or two after the election frenzy is over. Again, we sent out our own UPPT's reporter, Yakubu Lotu, and he came back with this one of election night.
It is now hours since the end of the electioneering process in Lokoja, following sorting and counting of ballots. But the usual nightlife is yet to return to the ancient town.
As for yesterday, we know what we sold. But today I'm sure it's because of the election. We don't see people out.
Sunday, Monday, it's a long weekend.
so that I cannot leave them like that. I have to get something for them. So you see me, I'm still searching for what I will buy, what I will get for them.
The elections are over and the people anxiously await the outcome of the exercise. Of course, by this time tomorrow, I'm sure the hustling and bustling of this town have returned. My name is Ilyasu Onnotu Yakubo. It's back to you in the studio.
Thank you. I think we can now release Yakubu to go and sleep as we continue the vote watch, and of course we'll also resume with him tomorrow. Before I let you go, you've seen the process. You've seen other processes. What would you be advocating at this time as an observer, as a stakeholder, as a Kogi?
Yeah, let's also look at the security arrangement that was put in place. We complained earlier about the security personnel and security agencies. You have to be the one calling them. Come to a meeting, they don't call stakeholders. And they always promise the nation and the people that we are on top of the situation. We are on top of the situation. You can see what we saw today, that they are really not on top of the situation. The miscreants, the people who perpetrate electoral violence and disrupt the process are being done by people that are known. Security men are here. We have been told thousands of security men have been put here. And from what we saw, I witnessed snatching of ballot box in a platform, polling unit, and that is very unfortunate. What proactive measures have been put in place? So we need to examine the electoral security in this country, because INEC has no power to constitute the security agent. And whenever you go to them to let them know that what are you really doing, they keep the information to themselves. We put them on radio, televisions, and to say, come and discuss with us. We never saw some of those things that is there. And we are really not too happy about the way and manner the hoodlums hijacked certain processes, disrupted electoral material. Even observers were attacked in Ganaja Junction. Some of our colleagues, local observers here, were attacked. Where are the policemen? Where are the other people? We also observe the fact that in the past, you will see immigration, you will see civil defense, you will see even prison in the rural community playing a complementary role. In this exercise, we didn't see them. So where are the security men that those things have? They need to tell us. We the security agency, particularly the Nigerian police, to tell us how many persons have been arrested in this kind of disruptive tendencies. How can the nation spend so much? Journalists have not been sleeping, civil society have not been sleeping. Why are the politicians and the supporters disrupting the electoral process? That's why huge and colossal resources that have been put in this election. We are highly disappointed about the security arrangement that have been put in place in this election in Kogi State.
All right, that's you have indeed made your point, Mr. Idris, election observer. That's how we'll be rounding up today. Of course, you heard earlier, you heard earlier from the resident electoral commissioner. I said that the process will begin tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We'll be here live to make sure that we give you all that. Mr. Idris, thank you very much for being a part of this. We'll also call on you as events unfold to perhaps give us an insight into what we should be expecting. So it's back to Femi in the studio as we round up Kogi and Bayelsa decides.
Thank you very much. The Kogi scenario is particularly raises a lot of concern. We got some respite when we went to Bayelsa, but another person has come up to complement the stories we have heard about Kogi, the high level of desperation. Now, in coming back to the Abuja studio, let me bring in Victor first, who will talk on what this law will bring from both Lokoja and Yenagua. The announcement has been made that collation will start at 9 o'clock. What are we expecting to have to be happening now, between now and 9 o'clock?
Thank you so much. Between now and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, all that we'll do is to collate at what level. We'll finish the collations at what level. For INEC, we call them registration areas. The public knows they are known as what? Ward levels. When we finish at ward levels, that is all the results from the polling units, we collect at the ward level. Then all the results from the ward levels, we then go and collate at the local government levels. When we finish at the local government level, it's the results that the collation officers from the local governments will now take to the state collation center. Those are the places the Rex were talking about. Then at the state collation center tomorrow morning, we will now commence collation of the results from those local governments one by one. And at the end of that collation at the state level, we'll have the final result, and the returning officer will make a declaration. So for now, in all the wards in the 2 states, a lot of collation is going on. Some have even completed. Then in all the local governments, 21 local governments in Kogi, 8 local governments in Bayelsa, we also collect. So overnight, people are not sleeping. They are collating. We're just asking people to repose confidence in the commission. All votes are counting. The police, the security agencies are giving us necessary backup. There are people who may be apprehensive that some things may happen during the night, a lot of things will happen in the dark. No, because as we all know, in all the polling units, we already sorted out the results, we already counted what each party got, and we placed the result on the walls in those places. People, the political parties have the results, that means copies from EC8As. So all we are doing now is just collecting all those results so that we'll be able to we'll be able to declare tomorrow. That is once we finish the state collation.
Kabir, help us tie all this together. Like I said earlier, I don't want us to spend this whole night talking about what has happened during the day. Important as that is, we need to tie it down to the collation process, which is also very critical. And if you remember, one of the observations made by observer groups from the February and March election is that a lot of confusion is being brought into the collation process, and that we must be wary about that. In terms of security, how can INEC play the master of security? Because actually, yes, the law says that they are to dish out the orders and the procedures, but they're not in charge of security.
There is a contradiction, unfortunately, and I think that is where perhaps in the reform that is being envisaged that need to be looked at closely. Yes, the Electoral Act gives INEC the mandate, as it were, for electoral security management. But unfortunately, that power, as it were, has been put on the shoulders of the police as the lead internal security agency. Now, what INEC has done, and we must commend INEC for that, is to come up with the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, where it has brought together several agencies for the purpose of electoral security management. It discusses with them, it takes decisions that are quote and unquote supposed to be binding. So as an example, we know there were to be 3 concentric cycles of security during the election. The polling unit, which is the inner concentric cycle, the inner concentric cycle, where at the polling unit, the security agents there will not be armed. Now, the inner cycle, they will be armed. And then, of course, the outer cycle, where they will also be armed, probably the military and then several other security agencies. Now, unfortunately, from experience, that is not being observed, and an indication of that is even what happened today. If you have those kind of cycles, there is no way talks will be able to, even if they are able to overcome the first cycle, definitely overcoming the second cycle, and then the third one will be impossible. But we've seen the kind of brigandry we've seen, the kind of trickery we've seen. So it brings to question the role of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. Perhaps INEC needs to look more closely at that. I'm not so comfortable, and I say this with all sense of responsibility. The same agencies that have been given responsibility for managing the electoral security cycle have their staff deployed to INEC. So who interrogates the process? Frankly, the only people that can do that are journalists and then civil society organizations. So we make such reports. But unfortunately, there is no bite to that report. Even after the 2019 elections, the February and March elections, sessions were held with virtually all the stakeholders. But the session for the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security was not transparent. So we know that there were breaches to the process. A good example is when a collation center was the military attempted to take over a collation center in one of the states. What punitive measure, what penalty was given to that particular commanding officer that attempted to do that? We've not had that. The IG of police promised us ahead of these elections that his men will have reflective jackets with numbers and names on them. I didn't see that in what I observed. The best I saw was an ID card, which is not that visible. The importance of that, just to bring it back home, is if there is a breach of a particular procedure by that particular security agent, you can look at the number, look at the name, take note of it as an observer, and report it. Now it makes it very difficult because that name, that reflective jacket is not obvious. So I think those are the kind of areas that I'm hoping to see. Sometimes I wish we had an ombudsman, as it were, within the electoral security management cycle that can play that role to, as it were, take up.
From your thinking, do you think an electoral offences commission will play the role of ombudsman?
No. Okay. I think we need an operational office, as it were. The judicial aspect is totally separate from that, because these are operational issues that need to be tackled as they happen. Unfortunately, that's not happening at the moment. We've seen what happened today. I mean, even your studio, NTA workers were affected on travel from Lokoja to Ajaokuta. Their vehicle they were almost the victims of highway robbery, thuggery. We're not sure. I'm not aware that anyone has been arrested. An observer was arrested, quote and unquote. We've heard of vote buying in several places. We've not heard of any arrest. Now the danger, I want to bring all of this home, is, as it were, the same police that I'm trying to I'm being critical about right now is saddled with the responsibility of arresting and prosecuting those. Exactly. Yes. So you see the irony there, and I think that we need to look critically at those areas, see changes that would ensure deterrence, because that is the element. If this kind of impunity takes place and there is no deterrence to it, then unfortunately we will sit here in 2023 and repeat this type of discussion.
We'll take another breather. It's going to be short, but we'll be back with more discussions here.
The much talked about November 16 governorship and Kogi West rerun senatorial election is here, and everyone is excited. In Tombia, Eketiama, and electorate are still on the queue waiting to cast their ballot.
Welcome. Thank you for remaining faithful to this cause. Let's look at the role of the National Orientation Agency in all this. We can call you the representative of the masses, of the people of Nigeria. And when things like these are being arranged, you are part of all the consultative meetings. We had, for instance, let's take factual issues. We had that Kogi, there was recruitment of talks before this election. would a national orientation agency do? Are we going to all withdraw and say it's all the police, the work of the police? Or what would you do when you hear such a warning?
Okay. While answering that question, I want to be a bit forward-looking. Reason being that earlier in this conversation, you have said what will happen in the next couple of hours is also very relevant.
Yes.
So let me speak to that a bit before I come to this question. I think that the background of the reports of violence that we have seen, especially from Kogi, and then the reports of skirmishes in some areas in Bayelsa State, should be a wake-up call for our security agencies who are participating in these elections as we approach the announcement of results. What that means is that they should become more vigilant. They should expect that perhaps upon the announcement of results as they begin to trickle in, anxieties and tensions might rise that may warrant further vigilance on their part as security agencies. Now, having said that, to come back to your question, there's a common thread that I see running in between the conversation that I heard from former President Goodluck Jonathan in Bayelsa and the conversation I'm hearing from Idayat in Kogi. What is that common thread? Former President Jonathan, for instance, is saying that if we want a country that is developed or that will develop, then every citizen must play his role. This is what former President Jonathan is talking about. Idayat is saying that for us to have the kind of elections that we want, we must stop the regime of finger-pointing at institutions. We must stop singling out specific institutions for blame. That we must now look at an all-of-stakeholder approach, towards ensuring that we get the kind of elections that we want. Now, I identify completely, from the point of view of the National Orientation Agency, with these observations. We think that thugs do not fall from the sky. Before they are deployed to go and perpetrate these acts that degrade our elections, they mass up in communities. You begin to see certain kind of movements that are untoward, and that should raise concerns. So what we at National Orientation Agency say when we go out on sensitization, and we did go out, in fact we went to almost all the local governments in Kogi State with our outdoor orientation van, sensitizing people outdoors. What we say is that community members should be vigilant. When these thugs begin to arrange themselves in preparation for their nefarious acts during the elections, that the members of the communities who see this happening have an obligation to report to relevant security agencies so that the appropriate measures to mitigate some of these things we're seeing can be put in place. We have conducted several sensitization and orientation sessions in the build-up to this election. People they came back from Kogi, for instance, on Friday, after going around with our orientation, outdoor orientation and sensitizing citizens. So I identify with Idayat and former President Goodluck Jonathan that we must increase the level of awareness of community participation in the vigilance that is required to nip these incidents of thuggery in the bud.
How do we do that? Yes. How do we? He said thugs don't come from just outer space. They are part of the society. And the society, on one side, we have seen a society that wants to participate in elections. But on another side, we see another part of society that is the cause of the violence and of the disruption that we see, even though they are fewer in number. And you, for community leaders, for politicians who are the leaders of the community, and to avoid buck passing, how then do we bring all this together? Putting aside the state institutions, because for some time we may not be able to bring state institutions into it. But talking about citizens generally, how apart from National Orientation Agency going out to campaign and all that, how do we get people to key into what we all have been discussing since this election started?
For me, it's very simple. We need to deconstruct leadership. In Nigeria, leadership is seen as God. It is so much weight of reverence.
You can't confront them with issues.
Exactly. We need
Their
to
word is final.
We need to deconstruct leadership. You know, we need to begin to refocus from the leader as a person to the responsibilities that devolves on the leader as a person. We're not getting there at all. We're even moving away from it. We need to deconstruct our democracy, tell ourselves the truth. We have reduced the entire concept of democracy to just elections. INEC is here, and I start to be contradicted. None of the political parties has democratic structures in themselves. Even the political parties are not democratic. So how can you be a vehicle for democracy when you yourself do not imbibe democratic practices? We must begin to deconstruct that one. And then we must deconstruct outcome of elections as zero-sum game. You know, a person wins zero-sum game. Okay. It's only the winner that
takes all.
It takes everything, and in fact, in almost all our local languages, the concept of opposition is like enemy.
Yeah.
Somebody to be crushed. We're not looking at. There is no partnership in the process. It is a question of, look, let me crush the guy and move. Our political parties, you see how many political parties have been registered by INEC? How many people run for president? We have 774 local governments. You know, apart from the ones that have been developed, say, in places like Lagos and the rest. A party will tell you that they have not less than 100 people per local government. But they put up a presidential candidate who gets less than 4,000. How does that happen? So even members of his party did not vote for, even leaders of his party did not vote for him. So you know, there are a lot of lies. We live in a lot of lies. I know of one person who happened to be an executive council member of about 3 or 4 parties. Because the whole thing is all deception. So if we really want to, you know, develop our democracy, we must stop looking at democracy as just elections. We must start looking at democracy as, you know, a system that is all-encompassing. When you elect a legislator, when he comes to Abuja or he goes to your local state capital, who is he supposed to be speaking for you or for himself? 90% of the times, they don't care about the views of their electorate. They speak for themselves. When you elect a governor, are you supposed to begin to worship him because you have elected him? If you have to worship him, I mean, do you think that person will even look at you as being valuable in the whole democratic process? So we need to deconstruct all of these things. Our concept of democracy, our concept of leadership, our concept of responsibility, with due respect. Please, my brother, I want you to forgive me and I want your commission to forgive me. But the truth about it is that in Kogi, I saw Professor Mahmoud Yakubu Media Center. In Bayelsa, I saw Professor Mahmoud Yakubu Media Center. Why is it a Professor Mahmoud Yakubu Media Center? Why not just simply an INEC Media Center? These are the kind of things we do to our leaders. Yes. We make them feel they are slightly above. And so they begin to assume a position that is, you know, that is above their responsibilities. It is your responsibility we're after. It is the service delivery. It is the governance delivery that we're after. Because, of course, you know, at the end of the day, that office is a temporary thing for everybody. But our leaders don't even seem to see. So please, sir, we need to deconstruct our concept of leadership. So leaders become more responsible to the people. People must be taught the democratic norm of asking questions. Political parties, when they are electing their delegates to come for their convention, these delegates must be elected, not appointed by godfathers.
Practically, even as at now, is that happening?
It's not.
Can you look at a governor in the eyes and say, "Oh, guy, you are wrong," and they will not say the other party sponsored you?
Exactly.
To say that.
And do you think that governors can't go wrong? They can definitely go wrong. But we have constructed a system that sees them as being above fallibility.
I must come back to you. One effect, which we are not taking cognizance of now, as politicians empower thugs, one effect of it is that we are reducing the monopoly of state of those kind of powers. The state itself, through the politician or through the leaders, is handing over the power of the power of intimidation, which should be in the power of violence, so to say, coercion, which should be in the hands of the state, military coercion, being handed over to thugs. One effect we are not looking at, we are just looking at the benefit of going into government. How can our political leaders be warned of that effect? Because it can backfire, or even on them too.
We've seen it backfire even in this country. I mean, let's look at the Northeast, as it were. The infamous, I think, Bakassi boys were empowered by politicians as non-state actors, instruments of intimidation for their political opponents. And then the other side of the conflict, those same boys turned on their masters, and the result is where we are today. One of my greatest misgivings as a security risk management expert in Nigeria is how there is a culture of silence. In fact, I'll call it a conspiracy of silence regarding the use of young youths by politicians in politics. I won't mention the state, but ahead of the 2019 elections, I went for monitoring of local government elections in a particular state. And as someone who has been in security for the past 30 years in Nigeria, I have never seen armed youths like I saw in that particular elections. I took pictures of it. And the kind of weapons, crude weapons that I witnessed, I was afraid for Nigeria. Now, all of us see that because I traveled from one local government to the other local government. I saw the two leading parties, because this is not accusation leveled at one particular party. The two leading parties were all doing that. Now, the first thing I did to myself was ask myself, do I have any branding on my vehicle or around me that would speak to a particular political party? Because if you do, you are in danger. Yes. So that's the first point. The second point is the politicians themselves. Those boys are, frankly, they have a life. They are like wild animals that are on their own. They are trying to appease their political godfathers, sometimes with the knowledge of the political godfathers or sometimes without their knowledge. So you see all kinds of violence perpetrated by this boy, either to intimidate political opponents or to appease, as it were, those political leaders. So that is for the elections itself. Now, after the elections, which leads us to your question, two things could happen. If their godfather wins the election, then he finds a way to settle them. And we've seen it in different places. And they become empowered. They become leaders of interest groups. If you need to move any issue forward, you have to engage them. Because if you don't engage them, they destroy whatever it is that you want to do. The second one, which is the more dangerous one, is where their godfather
is not able to settle them.
To win, where he doesn't win the election. Because firstly, he has invested in the electoral process and he has lost. So the money for him to sustain whatever it was he promised is no longer there. That means they would need to exact some form of influence for them to be recognized. And that is where you see tough wars happening, especially immediately after the elections. So I'm very, very concerned that non-state actors in these two states that were discussed in Kogi and Bayelsa, because unfortunately they've been mobilized. INEC has told us that. I remember when Professor Mahmoud issued a statement, the IG of police has attested to that. So they've been mobilized. And as it were, it's not that a particular political party mobilized them. Politicians mobilized them. Now, one set of those politicians will lose the election. The non-state actors that they have mobilized, what happens to them? So that conspiracy of silence that I've spoken about is staring at us in the face. There are over 40 million Nigerian youths that are unemployed, that are ready for these politicians to engage. We need to speak about it. We need to find a way to stop that, because if we don't, it is something that will end up eating us up as a country.
So when you are campaigning, you want to go for an office, David, possibly this is one of the areas you invest in. It's not enough to look for money to print posters. It's not enough to carry your ideas out. It's becoming fashionable to have some boys that can also intimidate your opponents.
It is a very worrisome trend, Femi. And we need to do far more than we're doing right now to curb it. I agree with him completely that we have far too many young people out there who are idle and who are easy recruits for unscrupulous politicians. We must increase the trajectory of whatever it is we're doing in government to create opportunities, to expand the economic space for participation, and to create avenues for our youths to acquire skills, and those avenues are not too far-fetched. We must make our youth to become far busier than they are today, and then reduce the ready army of people from which these politicians can recruit these thugs to perpetrate the kind of violence that we're seeing, and to degrade our electoral process by so doing. Okay.
Victor, let's now change the topic. And when we went to Lokoja, and one of the guests talked about delimitation, and he mentioned Obajano, I keyed into it because I drive past Obajano 10 years ago. That village was almost not existent. It was there, but you could hardly notice it. Now it's a sprawling place. How do you accommodate the growing number of settlements and cities and all that makes it possible for these people not to feel left out during elections?
Yeah, I think the man who spoke, he actually hit the nail on the head. The country has grown population-wise. Many settlements have come up, even in Abuja. In Abuja here, Gwarimpa of today, that was not a Gwarimpa of 10 years ago. Yes. So we see that trend everywhere. And the Commission is aware of this. For the past few years, the Commission has been looking at how to handle the whole thing. And I assure you, soon, steps will be taken to do all these things. Sometimes it could be very political. Yes. It takes a lot of courage. But I assure you that the Commission is aware of this, and something will be done. We cannot continue with what we have now.
Can the Commission do something on its own without a national census? Because in the last 10 years, we've not had a national census.
Well, these things are related, and it's a national problem, and the institutions that should work together must work together. And they cannot do it alone. The institutions must work together. The federal government is aware. And of course, as we say, the electoral process belongs to the country. It's democracy, as a former commissioner said, it's all about democracy. All agencies must join hands together to ensure that the right thing is done. The population growth in the country has been astronomical. Settlements have grown rapidly. Obajana you're talking about was just a little place before. Past through Obajana now, you see a city growing. So all these things must be addressed. But I cannot give you the details now. These are policy matters. But the Commission is aware of it, and things will be done to ameliorate the situation.
Alhaji Ahmed, you also a beneficiary of
the political process.
No, of the various developments in our political evolution.
Yeah.
And we know that the people who get into office are the first beneficiaries. The citizenry are supposed to be the eventual beneficiaries because they get the roads, which you tar, they get the school, they get all those things. But eventually, if those things don't come up, at election time, people think that this is the time to get their benefits. That's why we hear of vote buying and vote selling. This report of vote buying and vote selling have not been very prominent in this election, but it has also come. We are told that ICPC is monitoring and all that. How would this be curbed in order to make sure that people don't sell votes even when they want to?
It's a little bit difficult under the circumstances, and again it has to, like I said, I want to repeat, even at the risk of being repetitive, that we need to deconstruct leadership. You know, a situation
how does that theory fit into this?
In a situation where you elect a person, he disappears, and he doesn't come back to you until the next
What
election.
do you do to him? What can you do?
Because he understands that when he comes after some time and he has money in his pocket, he will still give you. In fact, do you know that there are places in this country where during election period, young people will put leaves on their heads indicating that they are for sale? You know, very, very strange. There are also places where politicians give money. In the night, their agents will go in and collect all PVCs of the people they have decided to buy their votes. And then the next day you come and line up and the agent of the politician hands over your PVC to you, and then you go in. Money you have received since last night. So there are a lot of ways they do these things to buy the votes. But all of this would have been a thing of the past if, for any reason, you are elected and you deliver nothing, and then you come back and people reject you. But sometimes it is even those that deliver nothing that succeed in getting elected.
That's it.
So what incentive do you have even to deliver as a politician? So we need to do, let me tell you, look at the major political parties, all the major political parties in this country. They collected huge sums of money from candidates during the 2019 elections. They made millions, in fact billions of naira. But most of the major parties now, I don't want to mention names, but if you go, their staff at their secretariat have not been paid. I mean, that level of irresponsibility, cannot grow democracy. So we need to be more responsible, more responsive to the needs of our people. We need to work in a manner that gives value to the democratic process. And if we say the only value the democratic process has is for people to go out and vote, then that vote too can be undermined by those that have undermined all the other processes of democratic governance.
With this food for thought, particularly for those people who will eventually get into office, those people for whom we are sitting down here and analyzing the process, we're going to round up this session. It has been a session that has tried to evaluate happenings during the day and possibly happenings during the night, which will then lead into the happenings in the morning tomorrow and about the final leg of the process, which is the announcement of the results. I want to thank our guests who have been here with us, Victor Aluko, the Deputy Director, Voter Education, INEC, Kabiru Adamu, the Security Risk Management Expert, David Akoji, SA to the DG of National Orientation Agency, and Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Adamawa State. We want to thank you all for the night you have spent with us. And on behalf of the NTA crew and management, I am Femi Okewo thanking you. We would open studios again at 9 o'clock tomorrow for the collation and possibly announcement of results. Thank you and have a good night. Although our programs still continue, you can choose to extend your night by watching.